Need for Speed, one of the longest lasting racing franchises within the gaming industry. Also, one of the best selling, rivaled by none other than the fat Italian man himself.
Hello!
What once used to be a quality racing franchise many years ago, then turned into the Call of Duty of racing games, with over 20 entries into the series, and for some reason, I decided to play all of these games. Now you may be asking, why would I do such an obviously dumb activity? Vroom. While on the wiki it shows there is a total of 31 games, that doesn't mean I played 31 games. Some of these are just handheld versions of Most Wanted and Carbon that I don't feel like playing. 3 of them were MMO games that would be shut down shortly after launching, and the other ones are mobile games. And no, I don't feel like subjecting myself to that kind of torture. When it comes to ranking each of these games, I will end each segment with what tier I would put them in, and then show the final ranking at the end. Sound confusing? Good. Also, I'm not ranking any of this objectively, because if I was, this video would be boring. And also, this is my list, meaning my rankings. If you disagree with any of them, good for you. I don't care. These are just my stupid opinions, and yes, I mean that literally. My brain has been rotted from this, so please, do not agree with me. I am not a real critic, I just pretend to be. And one final thing before we start, these are not full-fledged reviews of any of these games. Maybe one day in the future, but if I did that in this video, then the video would never end. These are just really a summary of some of my thoughts and stuff I want to point out and laugh at. Sound good? Great. So let's begin this horrible journey with the first Need for Speed. Road and Track presents The Need for Speed. Released on November 30th of 1994, and yeah, you can tell. Not only graphically, but just how it controls, how it feels. It isn't horrible. Hell, I'd go so far to say it feels great for the time, but nowadays, it just really isn't the best. Then again, I normally can't tell if a racing game controls bad unless it's like Carmageddon. Don't be like Carmageddon. There isn't many cars in this game, only 8 in total, with apparently a bonus one. And customization does not exist, but you know what does? The feds. They can pull you over during gameplay. Ah! The tracks also look decent for the time. I mean, granted, this is a 29-year-old game. We are all rapidly perishing. Nothing much to say about it for me personally, just a nice simple little racing game. It definitely aged a bit, but for what it was, it's fine and a little bit of fun. Solid C tier. Now let's move on to the sequel. So, Need for Speed 2. Yeah, Road and Track stopped supporting them pretty quickly. Released on April 30th of 1997, this game has not aged good at all either. Hell, I'd honestly say it aged worse than the first game. But at least it lets you change the color of your car this time.
Viper's got you in the pipe. Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake!
There is more cars and even a special edition with even more cars. But there's no cops in this game for some reason, which just kind of makes it really lame. It is much faster than the first game. However, I don't think that makes it better. It has aged far worse than the original one, which to me is shocking. But trying to make turns in this game is genuinely frightening. The rest of it, though, is basically just the first game. Again, I'm thinking C tier. Now let's move on to the next game. Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, released on March 25th of 1998, and finally, a good game. This game is definitely aged, but when I played it, I gotta say, it was way more fun to play than the first two. The game looks way better graphically, and I like how the tracks look in this game. Too bad the controls age like shit, and the handling is not too good for today. There is a race mode called Hot Pursuit, where it's a one-on-one race but with cops chasing after you. I like this game though. It unfortunately doesn't feel too great to play, especially today, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't a fun time. I'm going to set this game in B tier for now, so let's move on. So Need for Speed High Stakes, released back in March of 1999. For some reason released as Need for Speed Road Challenge in Brazil and Europe. That has got to be one of the worst titles for a racing game ever. Yeah, can I get a Need for Speed Street task? It is Hot Pursuit, again, except a bit better. This is the first Need for Speed game to have vehicle damage. And it even has performance modifications. But the coolest thing about this game in particular, the high stakes mode. A one-on-one race between you and another racer, and the winner takes the loser's car, and they never see that car again. This is a great mode. This would be an awesome addition in the newer games for multiplayer, and it just doesn't appear again. The tracks all look good for the time. The game handles fine for the time. It handles pretty similar to Hot Pursuit. To me, it felt a bit stiff, but that isn't really a surprise. Almost all of these older games feel like that. The tracks, though, the tracks look really good. So far, probably my favorite tracks to look at. And it was just a fun time. It was pretty much just a more fun Hot Pursuit in my opinion. I'm gonna put this game at the top of B tier. So let's go on to the next game.
Released on March 24th of the year 2000.
Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed. Nothing about this stands out to me, honestly, except for the scenery. That right there is pretty. I will say, the few tracks that are in this game are very well designed. Graphically, it is a beautiful game, especially for the year 2000. It is a shame that this game also suffers from its stiff controls due to aging badly, but aside from that, it's a really solid game. On PC, that is. I've never played the PlayStation version, and I don't plan to. Despite it being a good game, I can't really say it's my favorites or a top tier game in the series, but I still think it is good, fun, and enjoyable. So for that, I'm gonna put it at the bottom of B tier for now. So let's move on to the next game on the list. Released on September 30th of 2002, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. This game is good. Like, really good. Only problem is it controls like shit and I suck at it, but the game is gorgeous for 2002. For some reason, the PS2 version, however, was just the best version of the game, because it was developed by EA Black Box. The PlayStation version has an exclusive mode called You Are the Cop, and for some reason it is the first time we ever see it boost in a Need for Speed game, but only for the cops and only on this version. And unfortunately, that was not the version I played. I played the PC version, which somehow is not the superior way to play it. The tracks all look good and are pretty well designed, I think. The cops exist, they aren't good, but they definitely exist. I think the game is pretty good for what it is, even despite its aging. I will put this game in the middle of B tier for now. So let's move on to the next game. Released on November 17th of 2003, Need for Speed Underground. This right here, this fucking game. This is where, in my opinion, the series starts getting really good. While the game has definitely aged, and honestly, that's an understatement, from its AI to graphics, controls, etc., I still love it. This is the first Need for Speed game to let you completely customize your car, and it's great. The setting of the game is great too, the city streets at night. However, there's no cops for some reason, but it's a really fun game. However, it isn't perfect, unfortunately. Again, the controls are a bit iffy. Tracks are pretty much just reused throughout the entire game. And its AI, oh god, its AI is pretty bad. Especially with the rubber banding, that was just nightmare fuel looking back and seeing a Volkswagen just speed up to you rapidly. Of course, this was the start of games being released yearly at this point, so the developers had been rushed to get these out in time. For some reason, this game has a plot. That plot being become the best underground racer in the city. There's a few different kinds of events we got ourselves here, most importantly drift events and drag races. Drift events are piss easy, and I hate drag races with every bone in my body. And the thing that really brings this game down is, for some reason, how frustratingly difficult the game gets toward the end. Like, really bad. I am fine with difficult games, don't get me wrong, but FromSoft's games wish they could be this difficult. I still really like this game though. I just wish there wasn't so much reused tracks and terrible AI. That is the only stuff keeping me from wanting to play the game again. I will put this game at the top of B tier, however, so let's move on to the next game. Released on November 9th of 2004, Need for Speed Underground 2. The other game did this at the beginning too, but I find it hilarious that they have the actress for a character in the game talking about how they drive safe as they flash literal PNGs of her character in-game around as she sounds so robotic saying it. Hey guys, it's me, Inferno Fury, from the Inferno Fury YouTube channel. Making videos was fun, but in real life, I sell meth. Just like the last game, this one also has a plot. Why are they giving these racing games plots now? The game is pretty much just the first Underground, but better. It has improvements. This is the first Need for Speed game to have an open world. I saw this Reddit post asking which Underground was better. Someone said they're both the same, and then the reply underneath is just like, yeah, they're identical. Personally, I believe Underground 2 is the better game of the two. Is it perfect? If I lie, then yes. But I still love the game. Again, it pretty much improved upon everything from the last game. So yeah, I think by default that makes it better. It even controlled a lot better, and I think it is aged way better than I thought it would. It was fun. I really like the city you get to drive around in free roam. It's still an old Need for Speed game, however, but it does not suffer from poorly aging controls or handling like the previous games, in my opinion at least. For me, it felt fine. It did not feel nearly as stiff as Underground 1 or even Hot Pursuit 2. And yeah, this game kind of has a story almost, and plays out cutscenes as if they were a comic book. And no, the acting is not good. And with all that aside, yeah, I'm thinking S tier. So let's move on to the next game. Released on November 11th of 2005, Need for Speed Most Wanted. Ice cold take here, but this is one of the best games in the series. Yeah, it might be boring and unoriginal, blah blah blah. I loved Most Wanted. This game is genuinely amazing, and I wish I could still play it. Legally.
First I'm gonna take your ride, then I'm gonna take your girl. Get ready for that.
Bold words coming from a man named Clarence. The real only downside to this game, in my opinion, is the fact that we are trapped in a city that looks to be covered in piss. In terms of controls and handling, I don't know. I think it's pretty good and aged well, despite it being the same age as me. It's weird. Maybe it's because I played the game the most out of the older ones and have a bit of history with it, but I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. The cops are back, and this is one of the first instances of them being good, and also the last. This is probably the most fun and engaging aspect of the game. This game has some of the best cops within the series. Maybe not in the lower heat levels, but those are the lower heat levels. Of course they wouldn't be good. But once you get past 3, that's when the game really gets going. Then you got the cutscenes in the game. They're so bad, it's perfect. I don't think I could accept this game if the cutscenes were actually good. The acting is just straight up bad, and I love it for that. But there are 3 standout characters within this game that make me love it. Ronnie, Cross, and Clarence. No, I refuse to call him Razor. It's not on his birth certificate. Why is this a real image of him? What does he do in this game to warrant this kind of shot? Ronnie is just a bumbling idiot. Cross is one of the most over-the-top police officers ever, and it's amazing. And then there's Clarence here. He is edgy. He is Shadow the Hedgehog. Customization, in my opinion, is not as good as Underground 2, but honestly, it's not that bad. I've heard some people say it's lacking. I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. Drift events are gone, but we still have drag races, which sucks. The rest of the race events are cool though. Then there is the open world you get to drive around, Rockport. See, Rockport is cool. It's a dying city that looks eerily similar to where I grew up. Despite it being all gross looking, it's cool. However, compared to Underground 2, I think Underground 2 is the more visually appealing map. But I feel like Rockport being the way it is on purpose, and I still like it for the most part. Also, the soundtrack, not so much the licensed music, while I still like it, it's really good, but the original soundtrack. I don't think words can even describe the greatness that is the original soundtrack. It's all dynamic too, so it's pretty much, it has something playing for each thing you are doing. Oh hey, did you know they put this game on the GBA? And even the Nintendo DS. This game is truly peak Need for Speed despite all the TDM within the game, and no, I will not be listening to any opposition to my stance. Easily an S tier game. So let's move on to the next game. Released right around Halloween at the end of October in 2006, Need for Speed Carbon. I really liked this one. It is basically Most Wanted, but without the piss. No, seriously, this game is just a reskinned Most Wanted, and I love it. It controls a bit better, customization is way better, graphically, the game still looks really good. Cops are pretty similar to Most Wanted's, however, in my playthrough, they barely had a presence, and definitely not as good as Most Wanted's. The game also has cutscenes and tries to have a story. Somehow it's worse than Most Wanted. Yeah, it is bad and way less enjoyable than Most Wanted. Instead of Clarence and Ronnie, we have Darius and the Boring Squad. Despite how painfully unenjoyable this story is, I still like some of the characters. Like Darius, the actor who plays him, kills it and almost lives up to Clarence. The rest of the antagonists that you deal with in the game are just so boring. They will drive up to you when you are on their turf and say some lame shit and drive off. You got Neville. He's that comic relief character. He's cool.
That's great. I'm the monkey!
And then there's this guy Sal, who is nervous because he is tonight's big loser. The rest of the characters, I don't care for. This one girl is like kind of an ex or something, but like, I don't care. The rest of the characters just kind of exist to exposition dump and explain the plot to you. The story just sucks. I did not care about it at all, even less than I did for Most Wanted story. You also have whatever the hell this nightmare fuel is.
Nikki's good. Just listen to her. And I'll stick around and I'll help out and make sure she's not too hard on you.
This game has events similar to the previous game as well, except with this new one. It's called Race Wars. It can have up to 20 drivers in one race, at least on the 360 version, but only 12 on PC and PS3. Now this game has crews, a cool feature and concept that kinda sucks. Basically on the map there's different sectors, with each one being controlled by a crew until you beat them, which is cool. It's not as cool as it could be though, and you also kind of have to create your own crew with people like Neville and Sal. And these guys would be your wingman, which also sounds cool, until you actually play the game with them and realize how much better off you'd be without them. They try to help you during a race. There's 3 different kinds: blockers, which try to take out other drivers, drafters that try to let you slipstream off of them, and scouts, which can find shortcuts. With also additional specialties as well, like lessening police activity, but the only real notable one is giving you the auto sculpt feature, which is also a cool feature that kind of also blows. It lets you basically create your own parts almost. It's not the best thing ever, but I see what they were going for. It's a cool feature, just not great. Granted, it was 2006, so it definitely wasn't going to be amazing. It was going to be very limited for what it was. And probably one of the coolest parts of the game, the canyon events. They are really cool. I love them. And they do not have much of a presence. Then finally, the soundtrack. Oh my god, it's so good. Just as good as Most Wanted's. It is still somewhat over the top, and I love it. And this might be the last time I actually discuss a soundtrack. Unless I lied, which I probably did. I love Carbon. It has its fair share of issues, but I can look past them because I am nostalgia blinded and biased. S tier alongside Most Wanted. So far, I'm unsure how I'm going to rank these two legends, but with that aside, let's move on to the next game. Released on November 13th, 2007, Need for Speed Prostate Exam. Need for Speed PROSTREET. I don't know why, but I always used to hate this game when I was younger. Like, whenever I even saw the box art, I would just get angry for thinking about this game. This all started because when I was younger at a friend's house, I would play it, and I hated it. I don't even know what caused it. Never mind, I remember. But playing it for the first time since I was like 8, it's not bad. It's actually decent. However, it's just not for me. But even though it's not for me, I still think some of these reviews are lying. This kind of junk should never have been sold out of USA. Don't know what that's about. Electronic Arts just do business. Yeah, they do that sometimes. This game seems to be weird. I've seen quite a bit of people dislike this game because it's different from Carbon and Most Wanted. Yeah, there is no more open world. Handling is much different, and we now have a protagonist named Ryan Cooper. I really don't have much to say about this one, to be honest. It just isn't my kind of game. Damage affects your car's performance, which is cool, I guess. Auto-scope returns from Carbon, that's cool. All of the tracks of this game are fine for the most part, but then you have the Nevada Highway. You truly have never played this game if you haven't totaled at least 3 cars on this track. The game is graphically pretty good. It doesn't look like someone pissed on the whole thing. The soundtrack is good. Yeah, it's a pretty fine game in my opinion. It's not that great, but it has some redeeming qualities to it. However, in my opinion, I think I'm going to rank this lower on the list. I'm going to be placing this in C tier, however, it will be above the first 2 Need for Speed games. So let's move on to the next game. Released on November 17th of 2008, Need for Speed Undercover. This game released on pretty much everything from the 360 to the fucking N-Gage. No wonder why people hate this. As the name suggests, you play as an undercover cop to gather evidence to convict crime lords or something. And yeah, the story really sucks and I don't feel like elaborating. Now, I have heard that this is the worst Need for Speed game. What do I think? Yeah, kind of. I don't think it's good. Would I say it's that bad? At least not the PC version, but I'm sure the N-Gage version is amazing. The game has a lot of issues. Like, personally, I'm not a big fan of how the game handles, and the physics, they just feel strange. Like, some cars control fine, but then the rest will handle like shit. Maybe it's a skill issue, or the tumor that's been progressively getting larger as this video went on, but who knows. Graphically, it looks pretty meh. Like, it's not terrible, but come on, this came out after PROSTREET, Carbon, and Most Wanted. And personally, I think those games look far better. The open world you drive around in is okay, and it's fine. The music is great, nothing much to speak on that. And hey, wait, that NPC car looks identical to the NPC cars in Burnout Paradise. This isn't a criticism, I just find it really funny. Both games are published by EA, only difference is EA seem to love one more than the other. It makes sense though, because Black Box was put through the meat grinder to get their games out yearly, so to reuse an asset like that, it kind of makes sense. I do not understand game development at all, so I could be wrong, but I'd love to understand game development. While I don't think the game is complete utter garbage, that's a lie, it is kind of utter garbage. I was going to defend this game, but no. I can't really say I found it fun. I got bored of it after about an hour and a half of playing it. And also the pop-in just started pissing me off, so I just stopped playing. This was also when the brain rot started to get to me, and I just felt so tired playing it. I don't hate this game. At least not as much as the forum users from 14 years ago do, but I'm definitely not a fan of the game. I'm gonna put it in D tier because, yeah, it's just not fun in my opinion. So with that aside, let's move on to the next game. Released on September 15th, 2009, Need for Speed Shift. This game broke my PC and I still don't exactly know how or why. So all the footage here is not mine, go check the description for that, because for whatever reason, my PC did not agree with this game and would refuse to just run anything. I was still able to play a bit of the game, but once it started doing that, I just gave up because I did not feel like trying to deal with this. But based on what I did get to play, it wasn't bad, actually. I myself am not a fan of this kind of gameplay for Need for Speed, but the handling model is nice. It controls pretty well. I only got about like 5 or so hours into it, but I ended up enjoying what I played, way more than something like PROSTREET. It's definitely more realistic for a Need for Speed game, and I don't think it's that bad. The game looks great, the tracks look cool, but aside from that, I really don't have much to say about it because I didn't really get that far into the game as I would have wanted to. I'm still going to put the game at the top of C tier, however, so let's move on to the next game. Released on November 2nd of 2009 for the Wii and DS only, Need for Speed Nitro. This game is just so weird. Do I think this game is bad? Yeah, it kind of blows, honestly. The game is really, and I mean really arcadey. And it makes sense, it released on the Wii. You wouldn't expect them to release a Gran Turismo hyper-realistic simulator, would you? Oh, you would? Well, you're weird. The game in some ways almost feels like Burnout Revenge with how it handles, and not in a good way. No, I'm not saying that it feels identical to it, because it mostly isn't, because one of them is a good game, and the other is Need for Speed Nitro on the Wii. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the art style. Let's just say, I'm not a fan. All the cars look weird with it. It makes them look like a Hot Wheels car. If you told me this was a game based on a shit DreamWorks movie I avoided as a kid, I'd probably believe you. It doesn't look that bad for what it is. Granted, it was made for the Wii, expecting this to look like anything made since Most Wanted is just stupid. But yeah, the art style is just not that good in my opinion. However, some of you might like it. Despite that though, I don't think the tracks are that bad looking. They look somewhat okay for the most part, despite not really being that great to race on. At least for the art style, it's mostly just the cars and these characters that look weird to me. So the police are back in this game. Why? Honestly, they probably shouldn't even be here. A maximum of 2 police cars will chase you and only just get more aggressive as you get your heat higher. This is probably due to hardware limitations. I'm only assuming so because it's a Nintendo console. It's always hardware limitations for them. There's 5 locations in this game: Rio, Cairo, Madrid, Singapore, and Dubai. Unless it's on the DS, because the DS got San Diego. Each location has its own top racer, which is basically like a king in PROSTREET, except they look funny. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this game. I do not think it's that good. I do not like it. I'm gonna put it at the top of D tier. Moving on. Released on November 16th, 2010, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. Hey, wait a minute. The first game in the series to be developed by Criterion, the Burnout developers, and was supposed to be a reboot of the Hot Pursuit game. The game is good. It controlled weird for me at first, but aside from that, I don't have too many issues with the game. It looks nice graphically, however, I will admit the tracks are quite boring to look at. I do like some of the tracks though, especially with some of the shortcuts. Specifically this one with the railroad going through a cave. That's cool. I like that. For some reason, this was the only Need for Speed game to be remastered. Yeah, this one. Not Most Wanted, the best-selling game in the series. This one. I like the levels where you raced around in a police car, especially the levels where you had to take down street racers. Although, sometimes the AI was questionable. However, I like playing this way more than I did with the first 2 Hot Pursuits. I know that sounds blasphemous, but it does feel like a somewhat modern version of these games. My only real issue with it is that, yeah, some of the environments are a bit boring. It's not a deal breaker for me. I still like most of the locations. And yeah, I'll be real, it's kind of an issue I have with the other Hot Pursuit games too. But the tracks I think are pretty well designed enough, so it really doesn't matter to me that much. The cops though are pretty much the same as they were in the original Hot Pursuit games, just a simple modifier on the race. Not the worst thing ever, but yeah, they don't leave much of an impact on me personally. It's a pretty good game in my opinion. I'm gonna put it in A tier. So let's move on to the next game. Released on March 29th of 2011, Need for Speed Shift 2 Unleashed. You have no reason to have that subtitle. In my opinion, it's pretty good. I like it. The way I see it, however, is that it just seems to be an improved version of Shift 1, but at least this time I was able to play it. The handling and physics were better, the AI was much better in my experience. I actually liked a lot of the tracks in this game way more than the first Shift as well. I really don't have much to say here about this game, except that I like it and it's better than the first Shift. It's definitely not my favorite game, far from it. But I expected something more boring than what I played. Going to put it in B tier. So let's move on to the next game. Released on November 15th of 2011. Jesus Christ, no wonder this franchise fell off. Need for Speed The Run. I did not know this game existed. I've went my whole life not knowing about this game's existence. And it was also apparently the last game Black Box ever made before shutting down. Sad times. So this game is pretty much if Michael Bay made a video game based on how he directs movies. But the first thing I need to address, oh my god, this game is gorgeous. It was made on the Frostbite 2 engine and damn, it makes it easy to forget this game came out 12 years ago. In terms of how it handles, cars have weight, and you need to actually brake to make turns. It's cool, it takes a bit of skill. It's still really good to play today. The story is truly a story, if I'm being honest. Probably the best in the series, but that's kind of because it had to be. You play as this guy named Jack Rourke, and he owes the mob money, and they keep trying to kill him. And so you try to pay off his debts, and so is entered into this big race called the Run, which you must race from San Francisco all the way to New York. All the locations you race through are really cool, especially in the snowy mountain areas. That level is crazy. You even get to race through a fucking avalanche. It's insane. Oh yeah, this game also has quick time events. How does that even work in a racing game? You'd be surprised how little of a nuisance it actually is. There's also parts where our character just gets out of the car, and you do QTEs just to make it through the area. It's dumb, it's silly, it's stupid. But aside from that, the game is fine really. It is definitely not a bad game by any means, and has a good bit of positives. However, I'd be lying if I said it was great. It's also more of an experience rather than just a regular old Need for Speed game. It's also really short. Pretty sure it's the shortest in the series. It's also kind of a one and done in my opinion. After I beat the game, I feel like I might not have the urge to play it for at least a long time, unlike most of the games in this series. However, that experience was definitely an experience if I ever had one. I'm gonna put it in the bottom of B tier, and with that, let's move on to the next game. Released on October 30th of 2012, Need for Speed Most Wanted. Oh, fuck off! I think this game is just fine. Not horrible, but definitely riding the line between being a mid or bad game. Another Criterion developed Need for Speed game. I have a really hard time believing this is the same team that worked on Hot Pursuit 2010 and Burnout Paradise. The common thing I see a lot of people say about this game is it's just Burnout Paradise but worse, and I agree. The map for this game, I don't like it. I think it's very bland and boring and gray. It's kind of like Paradise City, but without the paradise, and you are only left with city. Graphically speaking, the game is still gorgeous to look at, make no mistake. If there's one thing I will compliment it for, it is definitely the graphical fidelity. And the handling and controls, I don't think are terrible. It feels very similar to Hot Pursuit 2010, which I don't think were bad in that game either. The cops in this game suck. And for a game called Most Wanted, that just feels like a sick joke. They either act stupid or borderline incompetent, or become the most nightmarish creature you could ever run into. It's never in the middle. To unlock some of the cars, you need to shut down the driver to get their car. Huh, that's odd. That's exactly what you need to do to unlock a new car in Burnout. It was either really easy and you shut them down immediately, or they send you across the entire map because they just keep crashing themselves.
Oh yeah, and to unlock the rest of the cars, there's basically no progression at all. Pretty much you could just drive up to a car at a random spot and just take it and drive away. That is how you switch cars, and that's how you unlock the rest of the cars in the game.
In terms of customization, it's very lacking, at least in the visual customization. It's just a simple color, that's it. But there is the modifications that can improve your car, which are basically just different parts you can change on your car. And you can pretty much change these whenever, and it's actually pretty cool. Originally was supposed to be like a sequel to the original Most Wanted, which would have been really cool, but the devs didn't have enough time to finish it, so it turned out like this instead. I do think the game gets a lot of unnecessary hate, which is mostly due to the fact that it is called Most Wanted, which yeah, it makes sense when you do that, you get hate. But I also don't think it's that good of a game either, it's just kind of mid. I'm gonna put this game at the bottom of C tier, so let's move on to the next game. Released on November 15th, 2013. Need for Speed Rivals. I think this might be one of the most unbalanced racing games right behind Mario Kart Wii. Listen, you can play as either a racer or a cop, but I swear the cops are just so much better than racers, and the pursuit tech for the police cars are basically boring adult versions of Mario Kart items. They are way too good and probably should have gotten nerfed. Like yeah, you can be a racer, and even being a racer itself isn't that bad, at least in solo. But compared to a cop, maybe it's just me, maybe I suck at being a racer, but Jesus man, I blink once and I'm at critical damage as a racer. Meanwhile, as a cop, I'm being just taken down by 7 other drivers, and I'd probably still be alive to take thousands more of hits. It handles pretty similarly to Most Wanted 2012 and Hot Pursuit 2010, but man, this is just such a nothing game. The world of this game being Redview County, one of the most boring to look at and race through maps within the whole series, only rivaled by Most Wanted 2012 and one other game I will get to later. Customization of this game, while isn't as lacking as Most Wanted 2012 or even The Run, like, yeah, you do get to choose decals, but this is what it looks like when you do that. The upgrading in this game is also just kind of so simple it hurts. In terms of the car list, this game probably has the most lacking and boring roster of cars in any game in this series. The cars that are in this game are not bad by any means. I still like them, but it feels like there's not too many options, or at least too many interesting options. The game also has this feature called All Drive, which basically makes you play in the open world with other players. This feature is cool in theory, but man, is it annoying. Hey, remember host migration from Black Ops 2? Yeah, it's like that in this game too.
Somehow, I don't know why.
All units be advised to city progress of a 1041. Officer requesting backup.
What? Are you kidding me? Worst game ever.
Now this could work and would be cool with this game too, with the cops versus racer thing. However, it prevents you from pausing even in the single player. Yes, in the fucking single player. But at least the game has dynamic weather. Oh boy, such a revolution. I just think the game sucks, to be honest. It was really boring and I gained nothing from playing it. I'm gonna put this game in D tier somewhere. And with that, yeah, let's move on to the next game. Released on November 3rd of 2015, Need for Speed. This was supposed to be a reboot of the series to take it back to what people loved about it. This game was more of a return of the Underground and Most Wanted and Carbon style of gameplay, kind of. Did it succeed at that? This game is kind of disappointing, because it sucks. The game brings back the live-action cutscenes, and instead of them being so bad they're good, they are just so mind-numbingly boring, it hurts. I do not like any of these characters. The game also takes place at night, and this map is dull. I could not tell you any recognizable areas in this game. In my opinion, a lot of the maps in the series are like this as well, but in this game, the cars all handle fine in this game, however. I do not actually find an issue with it, unlike some people. The police in this game, however... What police? The police in this game are pathetic. Probably some of the worst the series has seen because, yeah, sometimes they do show up. And the longer they spend chasing you, the higher your fine is. But these guys are nowhere near the level they were in Most Wanted. Hell, even Carbon, hell, Undercover for that matter. They are barely even a modifier on regular racing like they were in the older Hot Pursuit games. Most of the time, they don't exist. Oh yeah, you can't pause the game either. Yeah. A good thing though is the customization. It's not the best, but it's good. Graphically, the game looks good as well, but like, that shouldn't really be a flex for a game that came out in 2015. It's only like almost 8 years old. Jesus. The game overall, however, I'm just a bit more negative towards, just because I got bored of this game really quick. I had a little bit of fun for the first hour or two, but afterward, I was damn near falling asleep because it was all the same. It all felt the same. It definitely isn't the worst game in the series, but I can't fully commit to calling it a good game, because to be honest, I think it kinda sucks. However, I definitely found a tiny bit of enjoyment out of it. So I'm going to put it above the first two Need for Speed games in C tier. So let's move on to the next game. Released back in November of 2017, Need for Speed Payback. I should be paid back for wasting my time with this. One of the most hated games in the series, and honestly, I agree. And no, it's not because they forced microtransactions into the game. We will get to that, don't worry. This game, in terms of handling, I mean, it's not terrible. Don't get me wrong, it's basically just like 2015, except this time there's off-road races, and these things just suck so much ass. The map itself is boring, based on Las Vegas. It sucks. This was the other most boring open world that I didn't mention earlier. It is mostly a desert. I hate this. The upgrading in this game is really lame. It is just these speed cards. You can get a new one after winning an event or just buying them with your credits in game. No, not as microtransactions, at least not to what I'm aware of. I didn't see any tab that let me bought them. Or use a literal slot machine to get one. You can use this for free, however. I have heard some people say it is random if you will even get a better part than what you already have. And they've even claimed that you can get a worse part. That is just a straight up lie, because whenever I chose randomly, I always got a better part than what I had 95% of the time. There was the off chance, very rarely, that I would get a part that is the exact same level as what I already have. But that rarely happened for me. The story sucks. It's stupid and lame. It's basically a Fast and Furious movie, but worse. Somehow. I do not care about any of these characters. I hate all of them except for Mac. Mac is fine sometimes, but even he gets on my nerves quite often. My biggest issue is that they just don't shut up. Now, I would talk about how it is graphically, but I realize that this is still a modern Need for Speed game, so it kinda has to look good. Even though it came out 6 years ago and is probably old enough to be in the first grade now. Cops exist in this game. You can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes, because no, they really don't. Because I do not recall a single pursuit happening within free roam. They mostly just came after me during story-related missions or from these dumbass bait crates. Which basically, if you collect one, the cops will chase you until you reach an exit point. It's really stupid. I'm putting this game at the bottom of D tier. Let's move on. Released on November 8th of 2019, Need for Speed Heat. I went into this one ready to hate, and expected it to suck like Payback in 2015 and Rivals. No, it's actually pretty good, and I kinda loved Heat for what it was. Which really doesn't make sense at all, I am aware. But I like the handling in this game, even though it is pretty similar to Payback in 2015. But I think it is a bit better. If you want to talk physics, which I don't, it's questionable. The map for this game is also not terrible. I actually like it. It is definitely nothing too crazy. I mean, it's just Miami. The upgrading is normal again and not whatever the fuck Payback was. The gimmick with this game was the day and night thing, I think. You can choose to race during the day or during the night. During the day, you will do legalized street racing to earn money. Cops can be seen patrolling during the day, however, they will not come after you, even if you really should be put behind bars. But then you race during the night. It is all illegal street racing, and this earns you rep, which is used to increase your rep level. This is when your heat will actually increase, and when cops will actually try to hurt you. Cops in this game, I will give them credit, they actually exist. I ran into them way more in this game than the last two, even when in just regular free roam. And they are just kinda okay. They aren't very challenging, even at the higher heat levels. 5 is really the only heat level where I was even a bit concerned about them, but still much better than the cops in 2015 and Payback. You have the story. It's fine and it's decent in terms of a Need for Speed story. It's not nearly as stupid as Payback's, but it isn't anything memorable or interesting. I think the game is really good, and this is why I do not listen to video game reviews. I liked it. I can see why some may not like it, however. But in my opinion, it was pretty good. But did you know Ghost Games, the developer of this game, would shut down a few months later? EA, stop doing this! I'm gonna put this game at the top of A tier, so let's move on to the next game. Released on December 2nd of 2022, Need for Speed Unbound. I think this game is overhated. Yeah, I said it. This is the first game Criterion has worked on for the NFS series since, I think, Rivals. And I think this game is cool. I like the style of it. It definitely tries to go for more of that style Underground, Most Wanted 05, and Carbon had. And obviously, it doesn't quite compare to it. I mean, how could it? It's a modern Need for Speed game. The game handles pretty much like Heat, however, I think I like the drifting in Heat a bit better. The map itself, yeah, it's honestly kind of a bit bland. It's basically just Chicago, but boring. However, I refuse to put this on the same level as the maps of Payback, Rivals, and Most Wanted 2012. I want to talk about the soundtrack because it seems to be the most clowned on part of the whole game, and they always use the same songs when they clown on it. I personally do not think it is a bad soundtrack. I definitely feel like it is too samey, however. It is mostly hip-hop music, which is the genre I listen to the most, yeah. But you know, sometimes maybe not having it mostly be one genre might not be so bad, wouldn't you think? Now you got the driving effects and the cel-shaded characters in the game, which the community seemed to be mixed on. I liked them. I like the driving effects. The driving effects are really cool in games. Some people may find them distracting, which is fair. I don't though. I think it adds a lot of flair to the game. Then the cel-shaded quote-unquote anime characters, I don't have a problem with either. They actually fit into the world way better than you'd think. The game adds this thing called burst nitrous. It's cool. It is literally just a burst of nitrous. It can be useful sometimes, however, not all the time. The cops in this game, literally just like Heat, at Heat 4 and 5, they started getting difficult to deal with, but for me, it was pretty much the same.
Oh my god!
Now, the story and writing. Good God, is it horrible. Sometimes it is straight up unbearable, but then other times it is hilariously bad. Like over the radio, we hear about this election, and one of the candidates is literally just some old dude with dementia.
To the show, Holden. So you've spoken about the enemies of Lakeshore in some of your campaign ads. Who exactly do you think they are?
Thanks for asking, Simon. The list is long. Communists, well, they're in the top 5. Lefties, librarians.
Oh, librarians?
No. Why would you say that? Libertarians. Post-left anarchists. Post-colonial anarchists. Actually, just anarchists. Women.
Or the times they will mention Reddit.
Wait, who was? Rydell? Wait, did you get him a puppy?
Worse. I made him a Reddit profile.
What have you done?
Honestly, this is the most reasonable reaction to a sentence like that. For some reason, the game has a set of days within a week where you need to get enough cash to get into these special races, which are qualifiers for this race called the Grand. Which, yes, some of the races also require you to pay to get into the race. If you win, you get the full prize. At first, I thought it was dumb, but the more I played it, I didn't even care, nor did I notice the money being taken from me. Oh yeah, A$AP Rocky is in this game.
I gotta feed my need for speed.
With how much they put him all over the marketing for this game, I almost forgot. They barely do anything with him. He has a few missions with him. Sometimes you race against him, and he appears in takeover events. But that's it, really. I've seen a lot of people claim this is the worst Need for Speed, and I disagree. It is far from perfect, and it does not touch games like Most Wanted 05, Carbon, or Underground 2. However, I really enjoyed the game, I like it a lot, and yeah, it has its problems, sure, like the AI. Oh yeah, did I mention the racers' AIs? They aren't very good sometimes. Kind of reminiscent of Underground's poor AI, nowhere near as nightmarish. Sometimes they will just randomly rubber band behind you so quickly it's insane. And with all that aside, I'm gonna put this game at the top of A tier. Yeah, deal with it. So let's move on to the final ranking. Originally, I was going to include the mobile game, Need for Speed No Limits. The reason why I didn't, I mean, look at it. Why should I? We are going to work our way from the bottom of the lowest tier all the way up to the highest tier. So let's do this. Starting with D tier. At number 23, in dead last, Need for Speed Payback. Number 22, Need for Speed Undercover. Number 21, Need for Speed Rivals. Number 20, Need for Speed Nitro. And that is all for D tier. Now moving on to C tier. Number 19, Need for Speed 2. Number 18, Road and Track presents The Need for Speed. Number 17, Need for Speed 2015. Number 16, Most Wanted 2012. Number 15, Need for Speed Shift. Number 14, Need for Speed PROSTREET. That will be all from C tier. So now let's move on to B tier. Number 13, PORSCHE Unleashed. Number 12, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. Number 11, Hot Pursuit 2. Number 10, Need for Speed The Run. Number 9, Need for Speed High Stakes. Number 8, Need for Speed Shift 2 Unleashed. Number 7, Need for Speed Underground. That is all a B tier. So now on to A tier. Number 6, Hot Pursuit 2010. Number 5, Need for Speed Heat. Number 4, Need for Speed Unbound. And that is all for A tier. And finally on to S tier, the final 3 games in the ranking. At number 3, we got ourselves Need for Speed Underground 2. At number 2, Most Wanted 2005. And finally at number 1, it's Need for Speed Carbon. And that's it. Here is the full tier list for you guys to see. And that's my full ranking of every game in the series. Was I fair towards these games? No. Was I nostalgia blinded? Absolutely. I know for a fact people will be upset with my questionable choices, and that's fine. You were never supposed to agree with me in the first place. This is just my personal rankings of the games based on what I played and enjoyed. This is not the objective list that is supposed to be taken as fact, even though I wish it was. So I have finally finished my journey to play and rank almost every Need for Speed game. And what are some observations I've made on this journey? Well, for one, I like cars. And two,
the brain rot has consumed me.
I mean, it was fun at first, but halfway through I was pretty drained and bored from it, and I think I lost brain cells. But overall, it was pretty fun, I guess. If you disagree with my list, which you should, tell me what your favorite NFS games are in the comments below. I really don't have any other thoughts to add at this point. This video has been going on long enough, so yeah, let's just end it here. Make sure to like the video, because if the video gets 10 likes, I will watch the Need for Speed movie and review it, because yes, it is real, and yes, I'm willing to watch it. And subscribe too while you are here for more content. And you know what? Hit that notification bell too, so I can annoy you by spam uploading. And if you enjoyed the video, good. Now goodbye.